Hey everyone, what's going on? Questioning Contracts are back. I'm Rebecca, and this is
What's going on, everybody? I'm John.
a
Yeah. We're here. we're we're alive. We're living. This
Where
is
are we?
this is funny enough. This is take two for us this week. The things were just so heavy on the first take
Yeah,
that we decided to take a day to kind of just have some conversations between us, and kind of get an opportunity to vent our lives to
yeah,
each other.
and catch up. We
Uh,
hadn't caught up in a while, so
yeah, which was really, really useful because definitely a lot going on in life. But it was also really useful because, man, was I gonna come in strong with some heavy stuff for a topic. But that is not the case. I decided to rethink, reimagine what I wanted to talk about today. And when I say reimagine, I mean like within the last 10 minutes, I reimagine. Like this is fresh off the brain. All right. Um, prepared as usual, I know. Um, and I don't know how good of a conversation this will make for, or how good of a question this is. But I thought it would be an interesting exercise and kind of give me like a little more, I don't know, idea into your character a little bit. Even though we know each other relatively well, better than most, I would say. Well, there's always space to learn more about individuals and personal character and ideas and ideals. So, with all that preamble out of the way, what I really want to ask, kind of a simple question. If you could come up with 5 rules, 5 statements, and make them universally true, what would these statements be? Um, and what would that look like? And when I say universally true, I mean like you say it and the laws of nature bend to your will, and it is.
and it is externally too. Like essentially, we're creating the laws of the universe.
It's up to you.
Okay.
I've got one question, and it is, if you could name 5 statements that became true,
Yeah.
what would those statements be? All of you at home, take some time to think about this because I'm going to get the easy question out of the way so I don't ask it later, but we'd be interested in seeing what 5 statements you guys would come up with. But
I
uh,
have.
I'm gonna say before you say it, Rebecca, uh, everybody pause your videos here so that you can write your statements in before we say ours.
Mhm.
Um, that way we kind of preserve individuality here. Go ahead.
Cool. The first one would have to be all things must exist harmoniously with nature and not cause undue harm. Or, like, if it's something, just to give an example, if you have to take some of the land to build a house, there must be an equal measure that you have to give in order to conserve or, like, create nature, like, give back, not just like monetary. Um, that would be my
Go
first.
ahead. You know what? I'm gonna write my commentary down, and then I want
Well,
to
we
hear
might as
all
well just
five
get
first,
wait.
and
We
then
might
I
as
want
well
to
just get
comment
it.
on them.
We might as well
Hold
just get
on.
into that one because I'm gonna forget once I get to 5 when my first
Wait, let me
one.
let me pull up a notepad. It's
Okay.
gonna be tough because if we jump into each individual one right after you say it, I feel like
We're never gonna get back.
these potentially
Yeah.
have the ability to be full on conversations, each in their own individual mindset because of uh, the insight it gives not only to your
Mhm.
character, but what does it actually look like in the world? Like as an example, if I said all sausages are hot dogs, right? Like if that was one of my statements, right? That means bratwurst would never exist. That means whatever would
Mm,
never exist. Actually,
mhm,
it means hot dogs probably wouldn't exist because they were founded in the idea of sausages, right? And it was
mhm.
a mix of whatever. So like, there's a good chance if in that statement I eliminate hot dogs altogether, right?
Mhm.
So these
So
can be tricky when you say them and then what it actually looks like in the
yeah,
world. So it kind of gives me insight into that. So your first one was go ahead and say it again for me.
I think all things must exist harmoniously with nature and not cause um I don't want to say undue harm, but essentially like known harm. So like company can't just spill chemicals into the water or we can't just level a bunch of trees to make houses. Like we have to exist in an integrated fashion with nature.
I'm
And then
just gonna go ahead and leave it at exist harmoniously
there
with
we go.
nature.
My second one, each person exists in a world free of physical harm from others. And that doesn't necessarily have to mean like animals or like natural disasters or like unfortunate, but like someone choosing to harm somebody else in some way, form, or fashion. Um, I'm not talking about unintentional harm, like, oh, you hurt my feelings by saying that. I mean like physical harm or you know. I feel like I'm making a trap or something with the way that you're you're giggling over there.
Oh, you definitely are, but continue.
Oh no. 3. Man, that's as far as I got.
We
Okay,
can we
3.
can stop at 3 and we can kind of go off of the 3 and start working off of those because as I'm listening to this, I'm realizing how potentially big or small these conversations
Yeah.
could be.
All right, well then I'll do one more then. Mm, oh, how do I want to word this one? Each person gets to have a clear helper. It doesn't always have to be the same one on their life journey. So the ease or the difficulty in their life journey isn't taken away, but the ways in which they are being assisted are more obvious. That one could be fun. Have like little ghosts popping out and being like, go left, go right. Oh my God. Wait, hold on. Quick aside, because this is so relevant and I have to tell you this. So, if you're new here, I have a gift set, right? And one of those is, I sometimes receive messages or I interact with things that could be considered like not of this world, right? So I was watching watching someone's dogs and she was watching someone who is a medium on TV. Um and so she randomly asked me, she's like, I don't know, I haven't seen anything in my house. I don't think it's haunted. And I was like, I was like, I don't know. I've seen about 3 things or, felt like whatever. And she's like, oh, and she's kind of quiet. And then she goes, and this is a part that I think you'll find funny. I've never heard someone say this. She goes, well, I've smelled a ghost before. And I go, what?
Did it smell like vanilla?
No. She goes, yeah, I swear there used to be a baker in this house because every so often I'll get a whiff of these like blueberry muffins. And I sat there for a second. I was like, no way. I was like, you hadn't said that. There was a time where I was in the kitchen twice. I was in the kitchen and I was making food, like completely unrelated food. And all of a sudden this like whiff of like buttery blueberry muffins. And I was like, that smells like blue, like the box blueberry muffins you used to have when you were a kid. That's what it reminded me of. And I was like, oh, someone must be cooking next door. And then I remember that moment and I got chills and I was like, no way. And she goes, yeah. So then I told her too. And I was like, I think one other time, like when I was in the living room, and she goes, yeah, it's usually like near the bathroom. And I'm like, what the heck? I was like, I've never heard of someone like smelling a ghost before. And had she not said anything, I just would have never associated this.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. That is pretty wild.
I was like, oh man, a new feat unlocked.
Okay, my turn.
Your turn.
And I kind of cheated because I had some more time because I let you go first. But I can tell you honestly that I got nowhere with my time. But we definitely do intrinsically answer this question very differently. There's no question about it.
I would expect nothing less.
My first rule, you know what? I'm not gonna cheat. I'm not gonna try and alter it too much. The first one that came to my mind is, I am now God, King, Emperor. I am now.
Why am I not even surprised? We've had that conversation, but we've asked in a different way. What would you, if you could change anything in the world? I think that's what you said.
My second thing is, I have infinite capacity for information.
But why would you need that as your second one if you're already God incarnate? That seems redundant.
Potentially.
Okay. See, guys, I don't even know what game we're playing. John knows the rules and is making up additional.
I wish there were actual rules to this. Because I thought about potentially wishing for more wishes, and I felt like that might be a little too.
Yeah, at some point, I think you'd get tired of wishing for more wishes.
I said capacity for information. And you'll get to interrogate these as well.
Ooh.
Okay, and my last one is, I have the ability to flow through time. Flow through time.
Oh, see, you didn't say backwards or forwards. You could just be floating through the past forever and ever.
You have an opportunity to interrogate these. I'm telling you, I'm trying not to cheat. So, like, these were the thoughts that came to my mind without, like, full alteration of, like, me immediately self-defeating. Like I realized way later, like 15 minutes into thinking about this, or 15 minutes after coming up with the question in the first place, that God, King, Emperor probably doesn't make sense with previous ability. Like it. Anyway, I have. What did I say? I have the ability to float through time. And I apologize for the noise in the background. I got
oh my gosh, she's actually using it.
I got a little cat running.
She's actually using it now.
She uses it all the time. It's a daily thing.
Get out.
Yeah, multiple times a day. Usually, she'll do it randomly during the day. She does it whenever, like, I chase her. If I chase her around the apartment, she doesn't like hide. She runs to the wheel and she starts running as fast as she can on the wheel.
Yeah.
And then usually we'll get a spurt around like 2 to 3 in the morning where she goes running. Yeah.
I just remember when she wasn't running at all and you were training her.
Training her. I
Yeah.
mean, all things through training. Like, she didn't like being picked up. Now she yells at me to pick her up and hold her. Little steps, baby steps to giant strides. Okay, let's take a look at this. We'll go one by one here. So your first one, all things must exist harmoniously with nature.
Yeah.
And my first one was I am now God, King, Emperor.
Okay. Well,
So
what are you
here's the
gonna do?
first thing that I noticed off the bat. When given the opportunity to change the world around us, you envision change on a very like environmental, all kind of things around you kind of way. And I envision change through me.
Yeah.
Which is very, very interesting, the dynamic, because it actually follows with each of the things that we said. In each example, it looks like you are creating rules or laws that are universally like to be adhered to by people. Whereas for me, I want to change things within like my ability, or change my ability within the world. Change the function of myself, John, within the universe, whereas you want to bend the universe. Very, very interesting how we kind of perceive that.
I think that's also interesting when you think about I follow this one creator where he's always talking about how women are closer to creation. Not just for the ability, because they, can create little humans, right? Or like,
come on, little one. Sorry. I noticed it was running in the background and like you could really hear it. So
yeah.
Come here.
Man, ruining her fun.
Come on. She's doing that for attention.
Smart cat.
But go ahead.
Yeah, so this one person that I follow, he talks about how women are basically I haven't heard just him say it, but I've heard other people, but his specifically is that women are closer, it's easier for them to create, not just from a physical sense with, having and carrying children, but just like that's an innate ability of ours, whereas like with men it's like you guys create in a different way where you're like going out and like making things happen, and women it's like we're pulling things to us. It's like, again, that polarity and opposites. And so I also wonder, if we extended this question out to a lot of other people, would you see the same thing where, women are more thinking about themselves in relation to the environment, and you guys are thinking about yourselves in a different way in relation to environments and how far your specific abilities can extend? I thought that was really interesting.
So I'm gonna begin the interrogation, so to speak.
I'm ready.
Well, first things first. Do you see any flaws in that law, if any? Because it may just be that it kind of came out the way it needed to.
Not so much a flaw, so much as it would just be interesting when people go to pollute or go to just level the rainforest or whatnot. Like, what happens? Like, are they not able to, like,
you think there's an opportunity for people to function against what you've set in place?
only up to the point where it's going to literally cause harm.
Okay.
So that person can drive a bulldozer up to maybe a forest edge. But then, like, when they actually go to, like, start leveling the trees, like, I don't know, maybe the equipment malfunctions, maybe time stops, like, that would be interesting. But I do think that there would be a monetary effect because we're not, in a lot of places, set up to, um, exist that harmoniously with nature.
So I would argue that human beings would cease to exist.
What? No.
I would argue that not just human beings would cease to exist. I would argue that all animals, insects, fungi, fish, and I feel like I'm missing a section.
Amphibians?
I guess, yeah, reptiles are reptiles, and well, I didn't even want to do mammals or reptiles, but I would argue that all life would cease to exist. I think
That doesn't even make
that
sense.
why well, hold on. Let me get to it. In
Uh-huh.
order for all things to exist harmoniously with nature,
I said
right?
people.
Oh, all people. So that
Yeah.
was my misinterpretation. Okay, all
Yeah.
things must exist. It's not all things must exist. It's all people.
I'm pretty sure I said people.
Okay.
Maybe I didn't, but
You guys can
essentially, like,
rewind the tapes. All right. Y'all can
maybe
rewind. Did I mute myself?
maybe I
I'm not
did
muted.
say all things.
I'm okay with all
But
people. Um,
but even but they wouldn't cease to exist because the cycle of life and death is natural.
oh, okay. I like this. I like this. You
Like
know
we
what? I think
yeah.
you're right. I think you're right. Hold on. I would agree with you, but then if that's the case, what do you mean by nature? Right?
That was
Because
that was encompassing all the groups that
because
you mentioned.
bulldozing in order to build housing is
Right.
natural. That
No,
is that is the natural progression of human species as we know it.
but it's not harmonious to nature.
So but here's my question. This is why I ask what is nature, right? Because if you're
Anything
talking
that's not
about
man-made or human.
okay, so you're not talking about the nature of a person then. You're not talking about the nature of an animal. You're not talking about the
No.
nature of
No.
existence.
No.
Okay, you're talking about
Nature as in, like,
plants.
yeah, like plants and like the ecosystem. That's
Then
not
humans would cease to exist. There's no way.
No, that's not true because we can exist harmoniously with nature. It would so what do you call, like, sustainable farming or, what do they call there might be a
Humans would have
term,
never made it that far.
but I must misunderstand the situation then. I thought we were taking from, like, from today moving forward, not like we're
Oh,
creating a
okay.
new
No, that's perfectly fine. So if it was just from today moving forward, I could kind of see it working out.
it would be really hard from a financial perspective.
I think a lot of markets would instantly cease to exist. I think you can't drive anymore. People can't get
Mm.
places anymore. But then,
Oh, I didn't
what do
think about the
you,
cars.
what do
But
you, any business that creates any type of pollution, which is every business in the world, would have to cease to exist.
but
Farming would have to cease.
I did say that if you're doing something, like, balance it out. So you'd have like, if you're I don't know, if you're bulldozing an acre, you have to give back a full measure.
Little one. She is obnoxious today, huh?
I mean, you did teach her.
I did.
You
Same
created
thing.
this you created this monster.
She said, "I'll show you obnoxious."
Fight back, not with words. With the pitter patter of feet.
um, yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. So, like, is the concept that you want people to be good? Like,
I think there's a way to exist harmoniously in nature. Like, I do believe the biggest
is
where I was.
everybody vegan?
Ooh, no, because I think like the act of if you're killing for food, that's part of like the life death cycle. But if you're killing for like just for the joy of, hunting for sport would definitely not
Wait, so
exist.
does this extend to plant or to animals then as well? Then is that kind of like?
No, because it
See, this gets real tricky when you start to examine it, huh?
no like nature does its own thing. It's like my rule is for like mainly like humans. Because when you think about it, like an animal kills another animal and it
This
eats
is how
it.
the genies get you.
but then, but then,
Uh,
um, the dead animal, what's left, feeds the rest of the ecosystem, feeds the soil, and then when that animal gets old, it then feeds something else. So it already is regenerating and giving back to itself. So I don't really count that as not being harmonious.
what about like eating plants? What about eating lettuce, mushrooms, spinach, artichokes, tomatoes,
Okay,
apples?
this is actually really interesting to think about though, because okay, so let's say someone has a garden
Okay.
and and you are harvesting it and you're eating it. You could make the argument that someone's contributing back if they're composting. However, how much do people actually compost? And
Wait,
is that like
hold on. So this again works off of an interesting premise. When you think of these laws that you're creating, you're thinking of something that is bendable, malleable.
sure?
Because when I think
Mainly,
of when I think of like, and this is an interesting difference in how we may have answered the questions.
mm.
When I think of like laws, I think of absolutes, right? So
Oh,
like binary, on or off. So like if I were to say today, even in that example I gave with the hot dog, like it
yeah.
may take out hot dogs altogether because it's
Oh.
like the use of the word hot dog, right, relates to a certain number of ideas that only existed through sausages. Well, if all sausages are now hot dogs, right, sausages never got an opportunity to exist, and then what is a hot dog, right, without that root. Like it's weird like. So the way I thought about the question was very binary, meaning
I
if you
see.
say all people or all things, we'll use things because that was the first interpretation I had. All things must work harmoniously with nature.
Yeah.
The question then becomes, well, what does nature mean in this case? Does it mean like the nature of existence? Because the nature of existence is consumption, right?
Mm,
In which case we'd be kind of where we are today. Whereas if it's like the nature of like animals and trees or like just trees, plant life, well then there's some implications there that are interesting. Definitely like pros and cons in this new society that we go on living in, right? Like as an example, we probably have a lot more oxygen, right?
mhm.
um, but you couldn't use wood for housing anymore.
Yeah.
Um,
So I had a absolute, but it was in a way different way than you. So my statements are flexible based on the situation. So like it's a statement that then you hold a situation up to, but the absolute is no undue harm. And if you do cause harm, then equal must be given back as like retribution. And then the same thing was for the statement about like I even forget really what I said, but like no harm unto others, intentional harm. So it all like it's the baseline is, was their intent to harm? Yes. And not for like more of like a natural order of um because the thing is like when you clear land for a house, you don't it is I don't know, it's super rare to ever give back to nature. So like that to me
Mm.
is an undue harm versus like you create a vegetable garden, well you did have to kind of kill the grass and till the soil, but you're generating plants.
So I
So
almost wonder if a way to kind of like um actually that might be a good follow-up question at the end of this. So let's look at mine. I am now God King Emperor.
okay.
Go ahead. Break that down.
Um well,
I think I
the one thing
think
that keeps coming to mind is we've had conversations and I forget what I asked you. It's come up like maybe 2 times. But I would say like, well, if you could change one thing about the world and you're always like, I'd become, a god and then like
I
world
think I've always
destruction
said
or
that I'd become a villain. That
yes, or like
that's
world
what I've said.
destruction. So what are
Yeah.
you a benevolent god or are you a
Or
vicious god or
indignant, oof, very very very.
so how does it look like? Is it to humans, to the planet, to nature, to
um
existence of life?
so I'm gonna say
Amoebas?
God,
Water bears?
God, King, Emperor, right? God is the first word that goes in, right? I want to be omnipotent, omnipotent,
So the
omnipotent.
only god?
Um, there can be other gods. I'm
Ooh.
willing to contend with space. King and then Emperor, right? So I want to rule. I want subjects to rule over. Um, Now, if I was uh, interrogating this, then my argument would be, if you're God, you probably cease to exist as you know it.
Right, that was gonna be
And
my next
so,
one, like, are you still human?
yeah,
Or, like
can you really follow through with the King Emperor part if you hit that first point of God? Right? It's almost
read
like Betty in Adventure Time becoming
Uh-huh.
what's his name? Not Glob. What's the god of chaos's name in Adventure Time? Dang, it really eludes me. But like in that instance, right? You don't have control necessarily in the same idea that you have control in like the human way, right?
So,
Maybe, I don't know.
read me the statement again because it's
I
pertinent to
am now God, King, Emperor.
okay. So, I have 2 ways that this could go. 1, you didn't specify over what. So, technically, do you even have any subjects at all?
Yeah, I mean, potentially. I definitely think
You
God
could
is
just
the trickiest part of this. I
Uh-huh.
think God is the trickiest thing, and maybe it might be too much to want to play God. That might be a step too far.
Yeah, but if you didn't
Um,
say, because here's the other thing, you're leaning on context of you didn't specify in which context are you God. And so the one that usually comes to mind is biblical, but you didn't specify that. So you could just be a random person on the street going, I am God, King, Emperor, and nothing changes because.
Actually, so I both disagree and agree with your point.
Uh-huh.
I disagree because I do mean in the context of like that biblical sense of like omnipotence. Um, but you're absolutely right that in this statement, I am now God, King, Emperor. it could just be me yelling that. And what stops me from being God King Emperor right now?
Well,
I am God King Emperor.
I
Did I
know.
just complete? Did I complete my law? All right,
Yeah.
next one. Next
No,
one.
no, no. Hold on. There's one more, which I think is really funny. So
Shoot.
I didn't. You had mentioned in your speech, not in the wording, which is why I asked you to repeat it, just because I didn't recall. But you said of the universe. All right. Well, what about all the other universes and the aliens? Like
Yeah.
there could be a. You mentioned there could be other gods. Well, maybe they're a little bit more powerful. Maybe they smite thee of thy goddess, god-like image.
All right. So let's keep playing genie here.
Okay.
Um, this is the next wish for the genie. For you, it was each person exists in a world free from physical harm from others. For me, it was I have infinite capacity for information.
Let's start with yours first this time. I feel like uh that sounds really boring because if you know everything, then you don't really need to then it's almost like the reverse is equally true where you need to know nothing.
I think that was my intent, was to like have access to all information, but
Mm,
it's not. When I was thinking of this, I was thinking of all three in conjunction to each other. So almost like step one, step two, step three,
yeah.
right? Because
Well,
the idea would have been, if I have infinite capacity and the ability to go through time, well then, I can rewind or go forward, for whatever information I need. And
that's
God
why I
King
was
Emperor, I didn't think about God being a self-defeating idea in God King Emperor.
well, that's why I was saying too. It's redundant though with 1 and 2 because God already knows.
Yeah, I was not thinking about that at all. I would say the even bigger defeater of this statement is infinite capacity does not mean infinite recall or perfect recall or or like. So when I initially like asked the question, right? One of my thoughts was maybe one of my laws will be that I have photographic memory and uh and infinite, and then I was like, let me simplify that to infinite capacity for information. But I almost feel like photographic memory would have been better here because
Mm,
you're able to recall it if it's photographic, right? But like infinite capacity for information doesn't necessarily necessitate your ability to pull that information. It's like a library. If the shelves are stacked too high and you don't have a ladder, how do you pull from those volumes,
mhm.
right?
Well,
How quickly can you read those volumes, you know?
even with a photographic memory is, and I don't know this, but have we determined how much a human's brain can physically hold with a photographic memory?
Well, that's why I went for the infinite capacity, right? Because
Yeah.
that was also a hard stopping point when I thought of it. I was like, oh wait, if it is photographic memory, then what happened? Like, would my brain burst with information and I would die because of how much I tried to take in? Especially if I'm time traveling. Like, if I were to go to the future, would my brain burst if like I
Mhm.
saw something that I could not potentially understand? And it
Yeah.
was like, oh, we're talking on the fifth dimension, and my
Mhm.
brain literally can't comprehend it. Which is why I was like, okay, but if it's infinite capacity, then I absolutely can go ahead and take it in, and there's space somewhere, right?
There's
Um,
it kind of reminds me of a story and kind of goes along with what we're talking about. There was, I think, Humans of New York, who's a photographer that like takes, people's pictures and then takes
oh yeah,
down.
I remember them. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he's still doing it. Or I guess he stopped for a little bit and now he's back on the streets and doing it. And he came across a guy that he had a really interesting story where he said I was so disassociated from life that I didn't think that I was real. And, I was so disassociated that I thought I was living in an alternate reality and I was having trouble distinguishing like what was this reality and that reality. And so eventually he got on medication. He says it's so much better now, but it went to the point where I got like suicidal. And so I wonder, like, even though you have infinite capacity, when you start, getting to those states where like all about all universes, like like, can you even really interact with humans the same way? You just pop in and out of
I don't.
existence. Like I've seen videos of how people use their chi sometimes, and they can do like crazy unexplainable things. So, like, I don't know, does being on our world, is it fun at that point?
Fun, I would imagine, yes. But I think it's a self-defeating idea. The I think to some degree you're right, in the sense that it may be that with all that information, how could I even process speaking English in the way that we know English right now?
Mhm. Here, let me give me a second. I'm gonna pause it really quick. So, your brain will explode, reality will cease.
Yeah, I think,
Ooh.
yeah, it wouldn't be able to contend with all that information. But even then, like the idea of being able to like pull the volume of information that would lead to me being able to communicate with you, like in this moment, like
Mhm.
how would I even do that with an infinite library of information?
Do you think though that you cease do you think having that much knowledge shifts the world so that it doesn't become the world at some point?
That's an interesting idea. I don't know. I think, I
Like, think
guess it really
about
depends on like where you think the origins of life are, right? Like, because if you,
not just that, like, think about all the visionaries of our world. The world never is the same with their information. So I don't know in what way you would impact the world, but do you think that you could really retain that information and not impact the world in some manner? I feel like that's impossible, even if all you were doing is talking with people.
well, I feel like the bigger barrier is being able to even communicate, right? Like, I just feel like it would be like if infinite capacity for information. Hmm. What this doesn't say is what information I choose to store or not. So I could still potentially assume that I still have some control over what I choose to put in the memory bank
But if
to
you had
some degree.
I don't even know if that would be a consideration of yours though, because think about all the things. Do you ever really consider storage capacity when something's infinite? No. We don't think about how much our computer can hold until we've hit the limit. But when it's quote unquote infinite to us, like, we're not really seeking to.
That's an interesting idea because, like, part of me wants to argue against it, but I can't really, I can't find the space to do it because realistically, every time I hit like full on my storage drives, that's when I go back through to do the review of it.
Mhm.
But like there's sometimes in the moment where I'm like, okay, this is not something I need on my computer. I'm gonna delete this immediately. But they happen so far and few in between that
Mhm.
it's way more notable the times that I've reached a full storage drive that I need to now clear up
Mhm.
space for. So I think there's credit to your point there for sure.
And think about I just thought about how interesting of a perception this is, but you could apply that to all of life too. We exist in infinity until there's a restriction put on place.
I don't know
Think
that
of
I follow.
like um until someone says, "Oh, don't cross the road in front of cars. It's dangerous." Like, we're it's a restriction. It now has a limit. And I think you can say that for most things, like, oh, you're going to play on the playground a certain way until someone gets hurt, or, you know, I think
Mm,
we exist more in an unlimited capacity than what we think, versus us existing in lack and restrictions automatically.
I think I can like conceptualize what you're getting at here, but I would argue that I'm not sure that people are that creative. Um, I would I would say that people's programming is pretty limited, and so I mean, there's so many rules that we have in place that don't come from an explicit rule being told to us. Do you know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there are things that we know that nobody's ever said, but we know it,
Hmm.
right? Like
Hmm.
there's like an implicit understanding, but how do we know it? Right? Like if it's never been said, taught, directly observed, right?
Yeah.
Like
Do you
so
think Well, do you
the,
think with your infinite capacity, do you think that that actually is eliminated for you, though? That's interesting to think about.
mm, yeah,
And
I
actually, something else to think about is you have unlimited capacity, but that says nothing about, in keeping with the computer theory, because we are kind of like computers, that says nothing about how many programs you can pull forward at the same time to think about things simultaneously. So what if the curse there is you're stuck on loading and rebooting very frequently because you have infinite capacity, and it pulls, you're like, oh, I want to I want to know everything there is to know
no,
about
I
dogs.
that it's very similar. It's very similar to the concept of knowing what volume to pull in the first place, right? Like how do I communicate this particular style of English to you in all the English that ever existed? Well, now I have to sift through every volume of English that ever existed, which means I'm stuck, right? Like I'm hard stuck and I'm
Mhm.
unable to
That's what I'm
do
saying.
that thing. Yeah.
Yes.
No, I 100% agree with that.
And
I feel
how
like
long do you
that's the biggest defeater in my
Uh-huh.
opinion
Yeah.
is you this speaks in regards to the capacity, but it speaks nothing to the recall, right? Like it speaks nothing to the recall, right? Because the recall is the programming that pulls the information and then is able to spit it out. So
See,
I think that's the biggest defeater.
I was not interpreting recall the same way you were interpreting recall the start.
Hmm.
I was thinking recall as in to recall, to just know, right? Like if I think about something, then
Wait,
I
what do
know
you?
it.
Hold on.
Like
This is interesting because I think it's hard because we're using recall in two different
that's
definitions,
what I'm saying.
and
So
then
that
and
was
referencing
yeah.
recall. So like for me, and we can look up the definition to see like where we meet. For me, recall is the ability to, in my example of a library, walk up to a bookshelf, pull the volume, and open the book for the information, and then spit that information out.
Mhm.
But the library is your brain, and the books are the various information that you have stored in your brain, right?
So
Recall is your ability to go up, get the particular thing you need, and then provide it to you to spit it back out or work with.
right. We're on the same page as that, but when
Okay.
I was thinking about it, I was not thinking about it from the stance that it would literally pull every single thing on the topic. I was thinking about it from like singular thought or
Well,
singular
no,
experience.
I think you're 100% right on this in the sense that there's a secondary. So like
Yes.
a
Or
pulling
yes.
the information, then knowing what particular information. If you
Yeah,
have infinite capacity
right.
and you know all things on the thing, you're infinitely stuck. Like
Yeah.
you're
So so I had a really funny visual come to mind though when I was thinking about like the loading time and how long you would sit there. And at what point do you realize that there's a pattern and then till when do you figure out how to ask yourself incredibly specific questions? So imagine you're just sitting in a park and someone goes, "Hey, do you know what time the parade is?" And you go, "Uh," and you're just stuck in your brain. And the guy's like, like imagine that's your whole day.
so for me, the way I imagine it is me saying something along the lines of what time is that parade, and then going and saying, oh, a parade is this thing, and then saying, oh, but in this in this experience, a parade was this. Oh, there was a parade at this time. Oh, the parade that happened at this
Oh.
time. Oh, there's a parade. Oh, the traditional meaning of parade. Oh, the original idea of
So
you.
you're talking okay, see, that's where your and my visual differs because I'm sitting there and but your statement isn't that you're required to share the infinite information. So
No,
therefore
but like
so
the
I pictured
mental
you as quiet.
stuckness.
Yes.
Yeah, like
I pictured you just
processing
sitting there.
through all of it.
Right. That's the internal, but it sounded like it almost sounded like you were saying it directly to the guy as you were like trying to catalog and find your information, which is different than what I was
Um,
experiencing there.
okay, enough interrogating mine and being evil genie for me. Each person exists in a world free from physical harm from others. Oh my god, this girl is running today.
Mhm.
Okay, so each
I'm
person
waiting.
exists in a world free from physical harm from others. And you did say intentional physical
Right.
harm.
Yeah.
I think overpopulation would absolutely destroy us all. If there's no intentional harm, there are no wars. There's people still die for sure, but the population rates go way up rather than where they are now. Like people die more from
Mm,
intentional harm than than unintentional harm.
yeah.
But that's me just guessing. Actually, I have no idea. Do more people die naturally or unnaturally?
Oh, let's look that up.
Yeah, girl. Oh,
Girl. And I
she
said,
is.
girl.
Okay, so do more people.
I feel like there's so many ways that the data could be skewed to still say they died of I feel like anything that they're going to label as unknown causes is going to be considered natural death.
That might work to your point rather than a guess
That's what
against.
I'm saying is I feel like the data might be potentially skewed. So,
Um. So rate of death by cause. Actually, disease. The disease kind of beats out everything.
what are the
So I guess it
statistics?
would be natural. I guess more people die naturally than I would have ever really thought of or realized.
But what are they do they put a percentage on disease or a number?
Yeah, so for non-communicable diseases, so these are diseases that cannot be transferred through
Mm,
touch or any kind of sexual activities or
mhm.
yeah, by anything like that. 72.67%
Whoa.
of all deaths.
I didn't expect it to be that. I expected it to be high, I was expecting more in like the low 60s. That's
So
a high amount of population when you think about disease.
yeah, communicable diseases,
10%.
19.49%,
So then we're looking at
almost
almost
20%.
like almost 90%. 95% of death is all natural.
Uh,
Natural
uh,
in quotes.
that might be the case, or I could be reading these charts wrong. Hold on just a second. Also, I'm reading this off of Wikipedia, so remember to take this with a grain of salt. Although Wikipedia, traditionally, a lot of people using this information
Mhm.
are pulling from legitimate sources.
Mhm.
You would always want to do your due diligence and interrogate those sources.
I love when they would tell you not to use Wikipedia, especially in middle school back in the early 2000s, when you look on random websites and it had almost equal information to Wikipedia, and I was like, this is no worse or better than any of these other sites.
To be honest, yeah. So 72.67. Let me pull up a calculator just to make sure this is
Oh, here
all
I
on
got
the up
you.
and up. Huh?
I got you on the calculator.
Okay, 72 percent.
Okay.
We'll say that. I'm gonna leave off the decimal places.
All right.
19% for
Uh-huh.
non-communicable,
Yeah.
or excuse me, for communicable. How much does
Uh-huh.
that equal already?
91%.
91%. The rest is injuries.
My gosh. That's great.
Never would have guessed.
Listen, on this same topic, I was going to bring it up earlier, but this is actually more relevant. So when it comes to people dying, someone I know knows really good history, and especially on like atomic warfare. And so he was saying that, the whole thing when, they said, oh, pollution's causing the ozone layer and, that giant hole appeared out of nowhere. That wasn't pollution. It was testing of atomic bombs. And so there were two, one specifically, that caused the hole, and then the other that they somehow convinced, I believe it was Russia, to not designate or detonate, um, because it would have, you know, done a lot more environmental damage that, maybe the world would have ceased to exist as we know it today. And I always wondered that in middle school. I was like, there's no way pollution caused this massive hole. Like, what else is going on? Never looked into it. And then was listening to someone talk about it, and I was like, huh, like that makes sense. Again, didn't necessarily look into it further, but speaking of, things that
Completely out there when guess. Yeah.
right. Well, and just the fact that war and injuries only accounts for like 9%. Think about, if there was a case where you could wipe out half the population of the planet that way, like I'm glad it's that small. And then it's mostly natural stuff. But
Yeah. I'm looking through some ozone stuff now. But there's so much information here that I'm not gonna find it within a reasonable amount of time. Not that I doubt it, because that sounds
I wish
very reasonable.
I wish I had better recall. I know I did a poor job of probably explaining it. I'm not great when it comes to names of things. And so he mentioned the names of the bombs and I just don't remember.
No, I totally like it. I wouldn't be surprised if this information was on point. You know, like it wouldn't catch me off guard. I think It's very, very interesting. Like on the face of it, it sounds very plausible, right? On its face, it sounds very plausible. Um, but each person exists in a world free from physical harm from others. I guess no more bombs are going off. What is that? What does that mean?
I would agree with
Um,
you for overpopulation still, though.
oh,
Um,
because we're still contending for with issues for population. Now we're just adding a good eight
however,
percent of the world's population. 8% of 8 billion.
however, however, I do think that our world would completely shift from a tech perspective. I mean, think about what they're trying to do, or what they are not trying to, what they are doing in Dubai, where they're building the line. And so I think even if the world was overpopulated, where you live would be more segregated in terms of governments being like, you live here and you get X amount of space, but you're living on the 200th floor on the line.
I feel like there are definitely some things. I mean, free from physical harm from others. I don't know. I don't want to interrogate this. I like the way this is, to be honest.
Because it's intentional harm. It's not, because I just thought of one. I'm like, ooh, well, martial arts would be a thing. But no, like, that's not like intent to harm is ill intent, not if two people are willingly agreeing to fight, is that really ill intent to no. So
Yeah. I like that one. I don't really see much that I can pull at. Let's
actually
move on to that last one here. Oh, go ahead.
there's one thing that actually did pop into my mind. Someone tries to rob a store and maybe they can't hurt the people, but they can still steal stuff. And so like are cops allowed to retaliate? Because it is intent, not necessarily like intent to bring someone down, but
Yeah,
like,
white collar crime. What does that look like now? What
yeah,
is? Yeah.
because they're gonna be like, what are you gonna do, hurt me? And the bank teller's like, no, well, you're not gonna hurt me. You
I
can't take
mean,
risks.
even further, like going to jail. There's it could be argued there's a lot of physical harm done
Mm,
in just
mental.
the
Mhm.
yeah. So what do prisons look like, especially if we're considering the idea that like, oh, this is written into the laws of nature now going
Mhm.
forward. What
Mhm.
happens to all the current prisoners? What
Mhm.
happens to actually there is a lot you could pull at here.
Yeah.
There
Also,
is.
I think I think what you would see too is the more valuable something is, the less it's going to be in the public, because now there's not repercussions don't work the same way, which means that the more valuable, like whether it's like a horse, whether it's a painting, whether it's I don't know, a marble statue, people are gonna I don't know, get more creative in life, I think.
And
Ooh,
there are
what does
loopholes here
bankruptcy look
too.
like?
Um, Self harm. There, that answers both questions. What does bankruptcy look like? And
Well, no, because there's
and
some people, I'm not.
loopholes.
Yeah, but it's not another person harming you. But you could argue that medical debt and that puts you into bankruptcy is harm to somebody.
I think there is more to pull at than I initially examined. Um, let's jump to the last one. Each person gets to have a clear helper in their journey, and have the ability to flow through time. We already see a lot of the flaws in the flow through time. We already made mention. So
Yeah.
let's jump this time to you with each person gets to have a clear helper in their
Ha,
journey.
jump
I
this
actually
time.
love this.
I thought you would.
I hate the idea of Navi popping up without me requesting. Like that's the only thing. I wish we were clearer on the details of the when this helper shows up.
And it says nothing about you choosing the helper, so it could be like a kid on the street and they're like,
Oh
ha
yeah.
ha, like
Clear helper,
yeah.
right? It can be clear that your helper is the worst human being to ever exist, but they're clearly your helper.
Yeah.
like, I
Kids,
don't have
they're
enough
brutally
money
honest.
to purchase these Cheetos, these hot Cheetos. What should I do? Rob the store. I'll be your lookout, kid.
Or a kid that just tells you something that you know is true deep in your soul, but you're like, oh, that hurts so bad. Or it could be a
Yeah,
ghost. It could be something fun.
true, true.
People aren't ready.
I think this one is probably, in my opinion, I think this one is the most interesting of your three.
The helper.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like this would be, it would immediately
So much chaos.
so much chaos,
So much.
so many interesting effects on society that are like not necessarily detrimental,
Yeah.
but interesting, right? There's not like a clear immediate harm, nor
Mhm.
is there like a clear immediate positive.
Mhm. And it doesn't
Um,
say whether you have a helper in the bad times, whether you ask for it, whether it's in just in good times.
I think that's I think that's the one that, like, of your three, that's the law that I would contend with the most. Um,
I left that one purposely open because yeah,
yeah.
I was running out of steam at that point.
Unfortunately, the ability to flow through time has a number of flaws in it.
Yeah.
Like, is this forward, backwards? Do I choose? Do I pop
Do you
into
even have
random places
control
in
over it?
time? Am I
Yeah.
like, how is this? Am I Miss Frizzle? I got a magic school bus that I can drive through portals with?
Oh, Miss
Am I Rick?
Frizzle. Oh,
Like there are a lot of flaws, I would say, with the ability to flow through time that have been proven or not proven, have been shown through every movie ever dealing with time travel.
I know.
Um, yeah, I wonder why I want to go through time. Although, to be fair, when I think of going through time, I think more about going into the future rather than going into the past.
But what if that's the other thing too? What if flowing through time is really just to help you learn lessons? So you learn lessons in the past
Gross.
in the future.
Gross.
Mhm.
Okay. So, I
Cool.
mean, yeah, I think out of these three, the most interesting is probably God King Emperor, just because of
Yeah.
that's the
But
most
we did.
interesting.
I like the infinite capacity for knowledge just because we tore that one up so
It's
heavily in so many
yeah.
different ways.
I think that's I think it's an interesting idea on the face of it, but like has a lot of pitfalls for sure. For sure.
Mm-hmm. All
All
right.
right, so
Question.
yeah, what do we got here?
My question is, ooh, ooh, what is one societal rule or expectation that you do think should be changed, and to what? So I'm not talking about necessarily laws, but I'm talking about societal rules and like obligations. Like one is, oh, every person who's married should have kids. Like that's a common, maybe we should say societal perception, like expectation perception, not like true legal law, but like what is a perception that you think should be changed into what?
Okay. Let's see. I think if you had infinite capacity for information, but not with all the pitfalls that we discussed, infinite capacity for information and the ability to recall it at will, right? What would you put your time into cataloging? Assuming you live the normal lifespan of a human, if you knew about this power, if you were aware of it, is there anything in particular that you would say, nah, this has to be in my head and potentially elsewhere? Or how would you abuse your power of the capacity for information and infinite recall? Yeah.
That's cool. I like it. Well, thanks for sticking with us, guys. Come up with your own rules. Question those rules. Question those constructs that you are trying to build, and then
eviscerate them.
Simultaneously dismantle. Have fun with your chaos. Have fun with creating, and we'll see you next time. And yeah, have a great night, everyone.
Have a great night. Make sure you're diving head first, face down.
See you guys.
Bye.